Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Curian with Pride of Bristol Bay, and I've got Travis Elison here on a Zoom call with me to discuss the Bristol Bay forecast for 2021, specifically the Naknek Kvichak districts. Travis is the biologist there. Travis, how long have you been the biologist in the Naknek Kvichak?
Since 2014.
So the call today is to kind of get our customers insight view of what's going on in Bristol Bay with the biologist. It's a real important part of the sustainability of Bristol Bay, and these guys don't get near enough credit for what they do. So I'd like to ask, what do you think makes the Naknek Kvichak such a special place for sockeye salmon?
Well, you've got three major river systems if you break Naknek out from Kvichak, which they're basically separate. And each of those three systems have gigantic lake complexes, not just an individual large lake, but many lakes at different elevations. And the habitat is largely unaltered. So you have all this natural habitat that's extremely diverse. And the sockeye salmon have adapted to use those different types of habitat and have evolved into actually many different populations within those river systems. That's made them really robust and able to, keep producing for, really millennia and adapt to many of the changes they face, from different climate regimes to volcanoes and all those things. They've been able to keep going, including through this major fishery at Bristol Bay.
Yeah, it's always surprises me that we can harvest what we can out of Bristol Bay, or what we've been harvesting, and the biology has been able to keep it sustainable through that. What attributes do you think allow that to happen?
Well, you're looking at, with the Kvichak, you've got the largest lake in all of Alaska. And there's many other large lakes that feed into just that one. So you've just got kind of a perfect conditions as far as lots of clean, clear, fresh water that, and lots of stream, shore habitats, all these habitats that are great for the spawning. Excuse me. Sorry. Well, with the Kvichak, you've got all these huge lake complexes feed into the largest lake in the state of Alaska, and they're just really ideal for sockeye salmon. The temperatures are right. You've got huge production in the lake for rearing, which is, I think, probably one of the biggest things that separates Bristol Bay from anywhere else in the world. And with the Kvichak, it's the largest lake, and it's had the largest runs of any river system in the world. And now we're seeing, more recently with the Naknek's, been really productive. Last season, 2020, was the largest run to the Naknek River that we've ever seen. It was over 10 million fish to that one river. And Naknek's been doing really well too. In 2015, we had the largest run to that river, with over 5 million fish just going in the river to spawn that one year. So it's just a really ideal situation. And we're well over 100 years, almost 150 years into this fishery. So I'd like to think we're starting to get some things figured out as to what we need to do to keep this thing going.
Yeah, no, the Lake Iliamna must be an amazing salmon factory, and all the tributaries coming in there. The fry obviously don't run out of food. The food source for them to develop in there. I guess that's the piece that surprises me. Salmon go up there, they lay all their eggs and spawn, and then once the fry hatches, there's enough food in those lakes and streams to keep them going.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing.
You touched on an interesting point, and that was the difference in all the different genetics within each of the big river systems. And as a fisherman, you know, like as I'm watching those fish come on board, or the different days, you get to see different schools go by and different types of like looking fish. Do you think that that's what I'm seeing is when you see the difference in the fish coming by, size, color, that they're just going to different rivers within the major river?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. A few things, you know, it's hard to just look at fish, say this is going to this river, but I hear it all the time. We were catching a Naknek River fish, and you can tell those because they're generally the older, larger fish. They spend more time in the salt water. Typically they're there for 3 years, sometimes 4 years in salt water, which makes them bigger. Naknek's kind of similar that way. Versus say with the Kvichak, where typically you've got runs where fish will spend 2 years in the salt water before returning, so they're a little bit smaller. So there's definitely some of that, and even within those river systems, we've got major differences in populations. In the Kvichak River, for example, we can, like through genetic testing, identify 9 different populations right now in the just the Kvichak drainage. You know, as a fisherman, you're familiar with the Port Muller test fishery. We take genetic samples of fish entering Bristol Bay, and you know, every other day we're looking at what river systems are these fish going to, what percentage are going to the Kvichak or the Nushagak. But that's actually a pretty coarse look at the genetics. We can actually dial it down even closer into actual rivers or beaches within that river system.
I would love to talk to you for hours about that. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, a new thing in the fisheries world, and it's been really neat.
Yeah. In a typical year, how many boats would be harvesting from the Naknek Kvichak district?
I would say on average we're around 500 to 600 boats a year, and that changes throughout the season. Typically, we start out lower, around maybe 300 boats, and then we've got some of the later run timing there with the Kvichak and the Naknek River. So a lot of people end their season there. But you know, on some of the big years, we've seen over 850 boats fishing there at one time, and you've got another 200 plus set net sites at the same time fishing. So it's a lot of web in the water.
It is, but it seems like when they're really driving, like we can't catch enough to stop them. I mean, we saw that this year. Like we were fishing as hard as we could, and you were giving us lots of time, and they were just swimming on by.
Yeah, it's really hard to describe like the volume of fish coming in at one time. You know, all those nets fishing. You know, we're fishing probably 18 hours a day, and we're still getting escapements over. Last year we had an escapement over 500,000 fish up the Naknek River when we were fishing essentially maximum fishing time, and it's really incredible. I mean, we can have 3 million fish enter the district in a given day. So
More than I ever thought. I would kind of maybe thought a couple, like 500,000 would be a big push, but that's pretty impressive.
yeah,
But yeah, I always think of it as like an underwater migration of snow geese. Like when I'm trying to explain it to customers and I'm talking about the run, it's like, you know, if you've
yeah,
ever been in the Midwest and saw all the snow geese come through, it's similar. It's just underwater. But
right.
oh, cool. This year's looking like another strong run, roughly 17 million fish.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on the projection?
It's looking good again. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. You know, Naknek's coming off the biggest run ever, so they typically don't jump up and down too fast. Usually there's a bit of a correlation from one year to the next. So that just at the course level tells me it should be good. Kvichak's, you know, near average forecast, and the Naknek's pretty strong too. So there should be plenty of fishing time. I expect, you know, last several years we've, you know, I haven't even really been able to slow the Naknek down. You know, it had over 4 million last year, and we're trying to think of ways to catch more of them, but it's pretty hard when you just got that many fish. So I think it'll be good. it's hard to say how long this great period of productivity is going to go on. You know, I think we're 6 years into this of 50 million plus runs to Bristol Bay, and but right now we're not seeing any indications that it's going to end anytime too soon.
Right. Do you think the warm water regime that we've been seeing in general has been helping the sockeye? Has that been a factor in your mind?
Yeah, I think it really has helped a lot. You know, some of these higher elevation lakes, I think, are producing better than they did in the past just because they're warmer. They're getting better growing conditions. And we're seeing some life history changes. It looks like, you know, the sockeye are growing faster and maturing earlier and coming back, you know, at a younger age. So there's that kind of stuff. A big part of it is when you look at, you know, sockeye distribution throughout the world, Bristol Bay's pretty far north in the range as
Right.
far as, you know, so as things warm up, it becomes kind of more and more ideal for those fish in the northern end of the range. It might create worse conditions for fish at the southern end of the range, but there's a period there where it actually is, you know, helping them in this region for the time being. And I think a big part of that is too what makes Bristol Bay sockeye different than even other fish like from South Central Alaska is they're going into the Bering Sea, whereas most all the other sockeye in the world are going into the Gulf of Alaska. So we're seeing big differences in temperatures there, and kind of you get a buffer by going into the Bering Sea.
Sure. No, that's kind of, I guess, what I've been thinking over the last couple of years. So it
Yeah.
would be interesting, like you said, to see how long that these really strong 50 million plus run exist, how long they last. So just a little bit on, it looks like there's going to be a pretty heavy age class to the 1-2s. Can you just talk about the age class for a minute and how that's comes about?
Sure. So, I mean, within any given population, you could even just say in one sockeye salmon nest, you know, all these siblings come out, and they have different life histories as far as how many winters they spend in the fresh water, how many winters they spend in the salt water. They all spend one winter in the gravel as an egg and then come out in the springtime. And they'll spend usually 1 or 2, sometimes 3 winters in freshwater. Typically, they rear in large lakes, which is why Bristol Bay has been so great, although they don't necessarily have to have a lake. And then they migrate out of smolt in the spring. And then they spend anywhere from 1 to 4 winters, typically in the saltwater. And that's where they put on most of their growth. And get most of their size. So we've got all sorts of different combinations of age classes. And so the first number is the number of years they spend in the freshwater. And the second number is the number of winters they spend in the saltwater. And then we just add a year for the winter they spent in the gravel. So a 1-2 would be a 4-year-old fish that spent 1 winter in the freshwater and then 2 winters in the saltwater. And so the 1-2s are all the fish coming back are sexually mature, but they're an age class that can be very abundant and productive. And so, yeah, this year across Bristol Bay, I think we're looking at like maybe 60% of the run's going to be 2 ocean fish. So that would tend to lean towards a smaller size versus some years we might have more 3 ocean fish, 1-3s and 2-3s, which would give you a bigger size class. And then within that, we've been seeing it's been variable from age class to age class and year to year, but overall there's been a trend of kind of smaller fish by age. No one really knows exactly the cause yet. There's a lot of speculation and theories out there. But one thing we've seen consistently throughout Bristol Bay's data set is that when you have these really big runs, you tend to have smaller fish since they're competing against each other for food. They might get enough to survive, but they're not going to be, you know, as big as weight wise as you might see with a smaller size run.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I didn't really know that you count it the first year in the gravel. So that's something I just learned, that would be
Mm.
a 1-2 would actually be a 4-year-old fish, 4 winters.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like we should have a pretty good summer fishing in Bristol Bay, and the harvest should be strong. So we should have lots of salmon fillets. What's your favorite way to cook sockeye?
I'd go with the cedar plank on a grill.
Western tradition. I like it.
Yeah, yeah, it's hard to overcook it that way. It gets real nice all the way through.
Yeah, one of my favorite. I mean, I live in Pennsylvania, so winter in Pennsylvania, and one of my favorite ways is to come home and put it on the grill with some olive oil, black pepper, garlic chopped up, basil, and then I slice big heirloom tomatoes and lay them across the top, and that just keeps it moist all the way, like all the way through.
Yeah,
Kind
good.
of traditional come home to
Yeah,
salmon
we
dish.
did it last night. It was great. Nice big bay sockeye fillet. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and sharing a little bit of the biology with the Pride of Bristol Bay customers. So we really appreciate that. Is there anything else you'd want to add, Travis?
That's all I got for now. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. I hope to see you on the Naknek rainbow fishing before we get to work with the salmon this spring.
That sounds like a great idea.
All right.
See you on the river.
Yep. Take care. Thanks.
All right. Yep.